You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma podcast. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode. Excited to share this episode with you today. But before we do, I've got to thank our sponsors. First of all, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. They've been a huge part of this podcast for the last few years. So the Oklahoma Hall of Fame have been sharing Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com. And for daily updates, go to oklahomahof on Instagram and give them a follow. Our other sponsor today is Chickasaw Nation. Now, the Chickasaw Nation have sponsored pretty much everything in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma. And it's an honor to have their name and their brand supporting this podcast. A huge shout out to Governor Anatoby for supporting this podcast. It really means a lot. Our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my two pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my two golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car, Hall of Fame. They're awesome. Citizens Banks, where I bank. Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma. And adding to that is the Doghouse. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC. And hopefully our pups will run into each other. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, host, back with another episode. Today, I am at Cleats for Kids, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce our guest, Stacy McDaniel, who I guess is just leader in charge, top of the tree here, which I know you're going to say, no, that's not who I am. But your title is Executive Director, and so excited to dive into the story. Been here, the Cleats for Kids has been going since 2011, and there's a lot of impact that you guys have had. Everybody knows the logo. People probably see the van driving around. If you're in the school system, you know what Cleats for Kids is, or in any sort of nonprofit sector in Oklahoma City or surrounded around sports. You'll definitely know it. But I'm super excited to be here. This has taken far too long. We should have done this years ago, but I'm glad we're doing it now because you've had some really cool recent visits, let's say, from some pretty big people in the industry in the arena close to us. So before we get into all that stuff, though, I want to set some context, talk a little bit about yourself. What would you say is your Oklahoma story? Why do you live in Oklahoma? What brings you here?
Grew up in Oklahoma, actually. Both of my great grandparents came to Oklahoma. One of them in a covered wagon, literally. Came from very meager means, both sides of my family. My mom's side of the family, her father actually was a coach at what is now UCO. He was the basketball coach and tennis coach. If you can imagine a time where college coaches could coach two things. And so she grew up around sports and around coaching, and he was so beloved, passed away at an early age, but that was kind of in her DNA. And she met my dad, who is from Midwest City. He was really being raised by a single mom. His mom worked in evenings. He was an all-state athlete, but because his mom worked evenings, she only saw him play in one football game. But again, sports were in his DNA, and had the coach in Midwest City not taken my dad under his arm and literally got him a pair of cleats and a uniform and a football helmet, all of our lives would have been different. And so that's kind of how I got to where I am. I graduated from Edmond High School in a year that I'm not going to tell you, since we just were talking about how young we are. But I will say this: it was when there was only one Edmond, so just the Memorial Bulldogs. And graduated from Edmond, went to Oklahoma State for my undergrad. Was a business and finance. Was really active in the business college. Loved my Oklahoma State years, and then went straight to law school at OU. So I am a blended personality, and we are a blended family. I practiced law for a while, and in a law firm, I did litigation. Moved in-house, was able to have the blessing of working with my father side by side in an insurance company, and married my wonderful husband, Mark McDaniel, and then just made this whole new family of having the McDaniels be part of my life. So that's kind of my history.
Okay.
Got 3 kids, too. I can't leave them out. That's kind of what Mark and I are known for now, I guess. Besides Lance McDaniel, we're known for Mark for our kids. Cole is our oldest. He's an attorney here in Oklahoma City. Our middle one is Josh, and he is in Dallas, works in the financial industry. And Meghan is just graduated, and she is with a nonprofit consulting group here in Oklahoma City.
Yeah. So all of them out of the house, out of college. You guys are set free now, adulting. You're paying your own bills.
Yeah.
What a great place to be in. Love that. So with kind of your father's backstory, then, was obviously sports was a huge part of your life growing up.
Very much so. And just knowing his story and how he told it, that if Coach Jim Darnell had not made a difference in his life, he would not have had the profession he did. So he was in sales, in insurance sales, and ultimately ended up being the boss of that organization and brought up hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people. And nothing made him happier than when other people succeeded. And he said, I never would have had that if it wasn't for sports, and never would have had the chance to go to college if it wasn't for sports. So he went on a college scholarship to Cameron. And then growing up, he had an affinity with horses after he graduated from college. And so I showed, there's a picture on my wall of me when I was 11. I showed hunter jumpers. That was my sport. Okay. And so rode English, rode hunter jumpers till I went to college. Yeah. So we traveled around the entire country and took the horses and the trailer and did the whole thing. So yeah.
Is that kind of in the back of your mind when you're thinking of going to college? Because obviously Oklahoma State is pretty known for its agricultural world as well, That was not the draw for me to Oklahoma State. It was more just the vibe of Oklahoma State. I love just that kind of really organic, down to earth, beautiful campus, really connected with the business school. I just knew I always wanted to go to business, always thought I wanted to go to law school. Very interestingly, when I was right out of law school, our law firm did one of those kind of personality tests. And I remember sitting down with the lady, and she said, how long have you wanted to be a lawyer? And I was like, my whole life. Like, I love to read. I love to write. Like, this is my journey. I'm where I should be. And she said, well, that's so interesting, because really what you align with is nonprofit work and philanthropy and being a caregiver. And I was like, that's so weird. Like, I look back at that now, and I was like, wow, it was pretty incredible. So at the age of 23, my future was foretold. And I got to the kind of this window in that our kids were getting older and were very involved in sports. And I decided I wanted to spend more time at home, just being a mom. And then that's kind of the avenue that kind of brings us to Cleats for Kids. But that's kind of how we got to where we are now, the McDaniel family. Do you still know who that lady is who gave you that personality test back then?
No.
No, that would be great.
No.
If she's just,
would that be awesome?
To see you today.
You were right.
Your crystal ball was so right. Like, here we are.
Those things actually work.
Yeah, right. That's amazing that you had that. You remember that conversation and had that conversation too. And she's like, no, I think you'd be a caregiver and versus being a litigator and working for a
two
law
very
firm.
Different things.
Yeah, total different ends of the spectrum. So where does that kind of early want and kind of passion and desire to become a lawyer then? Where does that come from?
I think it is just the critical thinking part of being a lawyer that is what drew me in. I ended up doing litigation. For me, that was like putting the pieces of a puzzle together. So it was the strategic part of all of that I think invited me into that world of becoming a lawyer. I love kind of that adrenaline rush of making everything come together and telling that story. So that's kind of how I got to where I was.
And so you leave Stillwater, head to OU to go to law school.
Go straight to law school. There was a little part of me that was like, hey, little angel on my shoulder saying, gosh, you should go join, some world missionary group or something and travel around the world. And I think it was probably my parents that were less in favor of that than me, which was probably good. Yeah. But there was that little part of me that, had that leaning into like, oh, let's go do the Peace Corps. And but I think back even when I was little, remember the muscular dystrophy telethons?
I do not know. But
I'm dating myself.
Okay. Tell me about it.
There used to be these muscular dystrophy 24-hour telethons, and you would call in, and there would be a phone bank, and you would make donations. My girlfriend and I that lived on my block, we had a carnival that we raised money for muscular dystrophy. I didn't know anybody that had muscular dystrophy, but I look back now and I'm like, okay, I was in 4th grade and still I think had that kind of that internal drive to want to do things to help other people. And so we'd make carnivals out of cardboard boxes and charge 5 cents for kids to come play. And it's kind of
does the caregiver side of you come from mom or dad?
Both, okay. I think. I think both my mom and dad. My mom is very much a mom, very much a caregiver, very soft-spoken. While my dad had a bigger personality, he also was very much kind of a mentor, and that was his way of kind of being a caregiver. But my mom, she would be more what you would think of as a traditional caregiver. Yeah. I was very fortunate to have the parents that I did. My brother and my sister also still live here. Steve Cole builds homes, and my sister actually does therapy work with veterans and youth with horses.
Oh, wow.
So we're kind of now both in the same, little bit of the same industry. Yeah.
Do you still get out to ride every now and then, or have you just haven't done it since?
Have not done it in forever. Yeah. It's funny when you get around horses, it's like that you immediately fall back into that mindset of like, okay, the smell of the sawdust and the horses and the smell of the sweet feed. And it just, for having done it for so many years, it comes very naturally. My mom still has horses and my sister goes out there. So anytime I'm out at my mom's, we're down at the barn.
Yeah. That, again, like I haven't rode a horse in a very, very long time. But I assume it's like riding a bike. You're just kind of, everything comes back to you naturally and you're like, oh, I remember this. Maybe you're not going to jump straight away back to what you used to do, but just kind of trotting around. Yeah,
just getting back on horses, just like getting back on a bike. Yeah. It's the exact same thing. Yeah. And, I think I really love animals. Mark always teases me about like I'd have free to live in the backyard if we could. And I think it gives you that foundation of not just dealing with animals, but even dealing with people, just being around animals my whole life. Yeah. You just kind of are good at that relationship part a little bit.
So you'd have a lot more pets at home if it wasn't for Mark then.
We've had dogs the whole time Mark and I were married. Yeah. Mark grew up a little bit with dogs, but not as much as I did. And so we always had like 2 or 3. Most recently, we just got 2 lab rescue black lab puppies. Mm-hmm. They're so precious, but our white cushions are no longer white. So you forget after a while, like what they bring, the joy that they bring to your family as well as the dirt.
And those paw prints get bigger and bigger, don't they? Oh, I love that. So you mentioned kind of leaving the law space and going to work for Dad's insurance business. What kind of time in your life is that, and what leads you out of the law space to go work for the family business?
My dad came to me and he said, we've got an opening in our legal department. I want to reach out to you first and foremost. And he was also the one that encouraged me to spread my wings and go do something in an area that I wanted to do. And he just set that down, and he said, this is totally up to you, but if I would love for us to be able to work together. And it was probably one of the best decisions I ever made, just being able to work one-on-one with him and just learn from him. I did that for 10 years. And then I kind of retired, and then he retired not long after that. And then I was able to work with him, just kind of helping him with like different investment things and things like that. And as he would say, we worked in the same building together, but now we work in a space where our chairs run into each other when we both get up. So that was a really special time also to have that with my dad.
Did any of your other siblings work with in the family business, or are you the only one?
My brother and my dad loved to build houses, built both of our houses, and so I feel like he had that vein of similarity with my brother. And Steve is a residential home builder, does custom homes, and so he and my dad very much worked together in things like that. And then my sister was a teacher for a bit, and then she worked for the insurance commissioner. So my dad being in the insurance business, they worked together some. So we all had kind of that experience of being able to be around him in different ways.
That's awesome. I love that. It's something that, and that's something that I think over the years of doing the podcast, the people who I've met that have worked in their family business or been fortunate enough to work with their parents in some, aspect, it's not easy working with family, but you look back at the time that, maybe if you'd have gone somewhere else and, that added time that you're with your parents, right? When we graduate, we just move away, or we go this, we go there. And then you look back and all that time that I was fortunate to spend, with family. And I'm sure some days you're kind of like, I don't want to see you this weekend, right? We have a family birthday and I don't want to see you.
I just left you.
I just left you, right? But then you look back, and you're like, that's super fortunate to be in that position, right? To be around family so much. It
is, it's just such a blessing, and especially to be able to come back and do that as an adult, and be able to be an adult with your parent, and just have that relationship and have like super deep conversations. And, even some of the stuff I shared earlier about his upbringing, like he'd never really shared that with us when we were growing up. And so being able to talk about what it was like to grow up with a single mom, and having to hitchhike from college, back to the Thanksgiving dinner. Those are things we didn't know about growing up. He always had a lot of coats and a lot of tennis shoes. And he was like, the reason I love them is because I didn't have any when I was little. And so just to have those opportunities to really understand how he became the person he is. And the same with my mom, how she became the person she is. It's really pretty cool.
So you're there for 10 years and then decide that I'm going to be a mum now. I have my kids and I want to go spend some time running them around to football, soccer games, tennis, whatever it is. How old are your kids, and what's the difference between the ages?
Our kids are about 2 years, so 22 months and 18 months. So they're all pretty close together. When I did that, let's see, Cole was in 4th grade. Josh was in 2nd, and then Meghan was in kindergarten. And the cool thing is like Mark has been the best husband and soulmate, partner, everything you could ever imagine. And just his support in that regard, going from a dual income family, having this career path that could have taken me to Chicago and to all different places, and him just saying, like, I'm going to support you with whatever you want to do. I also know that always isn't the situation, and he is such an amazing man, and has been such a, like, even as my husband has been a mentor to me to become a better person. But that was really cool, and just wanting to be there more for my kids. I had even tried to start working part-time and felt like, as a lawyer and general counsel for a company, it's really hard to work part-time, and I found myself not being present when I should have been, even between practices and things like that. So, which is funny because then Mark had this idea about Cleats for Kids, and I was like, I'm not starting a business. So it was, then you feel, when we started Cleats for Kids, you really truly felt it laid on your heart. Because at first I was like, I just quit to be home with the kids. And it both laid on our hearts so heavy, and it was so close to home. And we knew these kids that needed help, that's really what brought us to that. Because, and I'm probably not this person that can fold towels a million times and refold the towels and clean out the closet. So it it was probably good for me too, but the timing was just perfect. And so many times we look back over, especially the last 30 years, like just seeing how much of God's hand is in it when you don't even realize it, you know?
Yeah, you only realize it when you look back. Right?
Yeah.
At the time, you're like, why do I feel this way? Why do I keep thinking about this?
Or why is this happening? Yeah.
How'd you guys meet?
Mark and I?
Yeah.
Actually knew Lance and Randy way before I knew Mark. And because I was a swim coach and a lifeguard out at an Oak Tree Country Club in Edmond, so I knew them, didn't know Mark. And then Mark and I were both working for a senator in D.C. and our paths crossed. And we're like, oh, you're going to law school. Well, so am I. And never dated until after law school. So that's how we just got to be really good friends after law school. And his parents were like, why don't you date that Stacy Cole? And my parents were like, why don't you date that Mark McDaniel? And all of a sudden it was just,
that's cool.
Yeah, we just kind of morphed into this journey.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably some, people who have been through law school, it's like probably best you didn't date during law school, right? Because there's so much going on at that time.
I might have been grumpy. I don't know.
Just caught you on an off day and it's ruined the rest of your future, right?
3 years of off days of studying and being in a bad mood, yeah.
It's brutal. So you said it was Mark's idea to come up with this, and then you said, like when you did this, you didn't want to start a new business, you want to spend more time with the kids. Take me to that time in your life then when you, like you said, it's constantly laying on your heart to be like, no, there's a need for this. We know all these kids, and where does kind of like the birth of Cleats for Kids come from?
Our kids were playing basketball. The boys were down at a community rec center called the Pilot Center that is on 3rd and Blackwell. So it's down, I guess, southwest of the jail. And most of the kids there were needed help and assistance in life. And an incredible woman, she still works for Parks and Rec in Oklahoma City right now, Lenora Ware, ran the center, kind of organized the basketball teams. And 2 young kiddos, George and Man, weren't re-upping for some sports. And we called Lenora and we're like, why aren't they playing? And she's like, well, they can't afford the equipment. And that's when Mark was like, well, we've got kids outgrowing stuff and we've got friends of different sizes. We just started bridging that gap at the Pilot Center. And Mark would go pick George and Man up, take him to practice. And then the next season, somebody else needed something. And so it started really very organically out of the Pilot Center. And then we're like, what is really the need for this? Like, what is the extent? And we sat down with Lenora and, because some of the kids had cell phones, but there were other kids that went home every Friday with the food backpack from the food bank. And she goes, well, I've got a mom. She has 5 kids. I got the city to waive the league fee. All 5 of these kids need to be engaged in something in the evenings and after school. And she told me that if I buy shoes, I will not be able to pay my groceries. I won't be able to keep the lights on. And she said they're not playing this season. And it was that night we went home and started working on this idea. And Mark had this idea of having Cleats for Kids and having it all about kids giving back to kids. So kids figuring out I can do something as simple as recycling my shoes to help another kid that's right in my backyard. And that's really how it started. People giving me stuff in carpool line, people dropping stuff off on our front porch, us just connecting. And then in 2011, we were trying to figure out, like, okay, should we turn this into something or just keep kind of operating out of our garage? And we always thought, oh, if there's a house that has some sheds, maybe we'll figure it out. I just dropped the kids off at school. I'm driving down 48th Street. Somebody's putting a for sale sign in front of a house with 2 sheds. And I stopped the car and I was like, okay, I think this is God hitting us over the head with a 2x4.
Yeah.
And we bought that house and we operated out of a year. We incorporated, didn't even ask anybody for money. We're just like, let's just figure this out. And that next March, the soccer coach for Northwest Classen called and said, do you have any soccer cleats? 12 of my varsity soccer players, she had 14, are playing in tennis shoes. And I said, come get cleats. I had just gotten some purple socks, Northwest Classon's purple. And that's when the light switch went on that there is such an incredible need out there. And I sat down and talked to her. That's when we started working with the high schools. We started partnering with the Wes Welker Foundation and Fields and Futures. We had already been partnering with the Police Athletic League for the littles. But that's really when that spring of 2012 that we were like, okay, this is bigger than what we ever thought it could be. And that year we served 4,800 kids. Yeah. This year we'll serve about 55,000 kids.
Wow.
So you think about what that takes to do that, and the one key element of all of that brings all of that together is bringing community together. It is, and just collaboration and collective impact. And so that's when we got started. It just really started truly organically, and people out of the generosity of their own hearts just sharing their shoes.
Yeah. It's when you talk about it, it's that simple.
That's simple,
right?
yeah.
And you look at the impact, and you look at not just only, kids need equipment, but down the road, like the impact and the positive impact of kids being in sports from a young age. Mm-hmm. Every kid should have that opportunity. Yeah. Right? They shouldn't be held back because they don't have the shoes.
Absolutely. And you think about all the things that sports and physical activity just teaches kids. So, the science that has come out since we started Cleats for Kids, like post 2013, are, CAT scans that show the brain literally lights up in elementary school kids with a 15-minute recess. So the kid who's, sitting inside because he's in trouble or doesn't have safe shoes is going to perform differently than the kids who had a 15-minute recess. The kids that are out on the playground that are having to develop conflict resolution skills on how they're going to share the swing set. All those type of simple things, all the way up to teamwork and tenacity and self-worth and being able to be a leader and a mentor for younger kids. There are all of these like life skills that are soft skills that are the things that really are translating into the classroom and then beyond. We have been around long enough now where we are seeing kids even bring their own kids back in that have been recipients. And then we're seeing kids who have been involved in kind of the Kids Helping Kids side, have collection drives as adults, start YP boards. So all of these seeds that were planted that you don't necessarily know what's going to happen, we are seeing growing. And then you see these athletes that have had a life-changing experience just because somebody recycled their shoes. One story that's very near and dear right now to our heart is a man who started coming to us when he was diagnosed with cancer, and he came to us 2 years ago and he said, I'm just generations out of slavery. I'm the first person that ever graduated from high school in my family. All I ever wanted was for my kids to go to college. And because of Cleats for Kids, my kid has a full ride to a D1 school. And she is playing sports at a D1 school right now. And he said, and we stay in contact. And he's like, one pair of shoes changed her life, and it's going to change our lives. And, you just think about those stories, and we've got lots of them, lots of kids that get involved in running programs. And because they're not injured, their time gets good enough that they end up being able to go to college with this. And then there's just the kids who just get a pair of tennis shoes and get to feel better about themselves. A Middale mom came in and visited us and said, I came in here a few months ago because my kid wouldn't go to school. He was being bullied. The only pair of shoes he had was his Halloween costume. And I came and got him a pair of shoes, and I just wanted to make a special trip in to tell you guys that he's back at school now and he's making friends. Yeah. So it's all of those things that kind of keep all of us excited and going,
Yeah, well, and the other thing too is like it's stuff that everyone has just old pair of shoes or most people probably have way too many shoes than they need, right? And that's the thing too, is when you hear these stories and you realize it really it's not rocket science. Like it's really that simple.
Yeah.
Just a pair of shoes that have been in your closet for 2 years maybe, they're tucked in the corner, you didn't even know they were there, can change someone's life to getting a full ride for it, getting a scholarship, going to school, having friends, going back to school. and you're just, when you start seeing that and the snowball starts to go and you're like, we're all in here because this makes so much difference. And then, you put all the minds together and you have this amazing center that you have, which you're still growing.
It blows our mind. Like we truly never thought we'd be serving 50,000 kids a year, never in a million years. And I think it's a testament to just keeping your eyes and ears open and thinking what could be and how could we plug in. And I mean, our communities are so incredible. Small towns, big towns, urban towns, like, Oklahomans are just wired that way of how can we help. And it's been so incredible to just meet like all of these people over the last 13 years that have changed our lives for sure. They inspire us. It's the Tommy Smiths and Devin Woodring, who is having collection drives right now for us, and he's the quarterback at Carl Albert, and he started having collection drives for us when he was in 3rd grade. Yeah. And I'm like, that's just the coolest thing in the whole world, Yeah.
Well, and like you said earlier, kind of beginning of this was that it was going to be kids for kids as well, and would love to dive into that and why that was such an important kind of foundation for everything that you've set up.
Yeah, that was Mark's whole, if you're looking at it from a business perspective, his whole business model was kids helping kids, because there's not very many places kids can plug in. And now you can get kids that are in elementary school that totally can understand, if I recycle my soccer cleats because they don't fit me anymore, there's somebody else that can play that wouldn't be able to afford it. Like, kids can relate to that. And Mark's whole idea was, if we can plant the seed of philanthropy, you're teaching kids empathy, you're teaching kids like how to engage and know they can make a difference. And philanthropy is not somebody writing a check. One of the coaches that was in here, it's very important for us that, our facility is available for everybody to come volunteer. So one of kind of our recipient schools, he had a team in here, and he came in and said, gosh, thanks for letting them come volunteer. And I just was like, great, of course, we love having you in. Not on my radar at all. He says, I just want you to know that our kids never get to give back because they're always on the receiving end. And for them to be able to come in and volunteer totally changes their self-worth. And that was like one of those moments where I just stopped in my tracks and I was like, okay, wow. Yeah. Like that was so meaningful to me. And a lesson I try to carry through to all of our staff and our team and our volunteers, Yeah. So kids helping kids is really a very large part, and it's what makes Cleats for Kids unique. There are a couple of other nonprofits across the country that we work with. One only deals with new stuff and you have to apply as a grant. One is a little more like us, but they don't let kids come in and shop, and they don't really involve kids in their mission. So this really is something that's super unique to Cleats for Kids in the sports development space. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I actually got to see the building now and everything. You keep growing and knocking down walls and taking over this little kind of place that we're in, which I love. It's there's nothing better than seeing what you're doing grow and kind of busting at the seams. To kind of educate people listening, how then 2012 and from that moment, how do you start to really build this model out for serving more people and then partnerships, and how does that kind of unfold? Because I'm sure you see people coming to you with all the need, and you're like, okay, we need to figure out how we can do this in a way that makes sense.
Right, yeah, and it's got to be sustainable, right? Like, we love to say yes and how, but the how is just as important as the yes around here. So building it out is letting people know what that mission is and the why. What you do is one thing, but why you do it is something else. And when people can tap into the why, then they really relate and want to help and recycle. And so having these collection drives, you've got to have inventory on your locker room shelf. So our locker room is where families and coaches can come shop for free. That was really where we started and is kind of the core of our mission and how it operates is through the locker room. And then we have created some collaborations and partnerships, like with about 75 other nonprofits. But I'll give you an Oklahoma City-centric example of how that works. We have partnerships with the YMCA and the Police Athletic League, all the way up through the Oklahoma City Public Schools. And so these kids that are in Millwood and Crooked Oak and OKCPS that are around these Y areas, they come in and the school helps identify kids that would otherwise not be able to play. 75% of those kids need a shoe. And so we go out and get grant dollars. So this is where we get people making monetary donations, and we leverage those and buy things that are on super uber clearance. So we're buying cleats for $10, once they really, or if we get a vendor to donate them. And then these kids get new shoes. And so we have these distribution events that are unbelievable. Kids come in, they get fitted for their shoe. None of them know what size shoe they wear. None of them have a shoe that fits. And they get to pick out a shoe. They get a buddy that helps them that's a volunteer. They get snacks. They get new socks. And then they get their uniforms, and then they get to play. And these are kids that when we first started working with the Y, were showing up in Crocs and pajamas. So first generation sports had never been exposed to this. And then the Police Athletic League picks them up, and we follow along that journey, and then we're following them into school sports. So that's how kind of some of our programs work. Mm-hmm. We also identify okay, what's an area that's not working, or where are we losing kids in the Oklahoma City and the Tulsa area, and especially the more urban, larger Muskogee and Lawton areas. What's happening that kids are not being able to participate? Well, the high cost is very much a large part. That's easy for us. We can step in and fix that issue. But also girls in sports and the culture around that has been an issue. So alongside the Thunder and USA Softball and River Sport, and UCO, the Spark, we've created kind of a girls in sports initiative called Fuel, and are having a summit for middle school girls. So that's also a way where these collaborations can come together and try to address some of the issues that our young folks are facing as impediments to getting active. Mm-hmm. So it's been really cool to see Oklahoma City develop in that way and create these opportunities.
And so you don't just serve Oklahoma City, you serve everywhere in the state.
Yes, statewide. We've served all 77 counties. This year we're on the quest for 77, so we hope we are able to serve kids in all 77 counties in 1 year. Yeah. That's our goal.
And is that just getting the word out? That's all it takes, really, to have them come here? Or are you,
Yes,
you guys have a van now, too.
Yeah, we have a van, and we'll travel. Yes, it's really getting the word out, and it's been so fun to do this because, you go to your college football game and you're, connected with your friends from college, and they take some stuff back to some elementary schools. And really it's just folks that might be listening to this down in Hugo may be able to call us and say hey, I'm going to be in Oklahoma City. Do you guys have things that need to go down there? We've got folks from Idabel that come up. I mentioned Guyman. Sometimes they bring their bus down. So it's really cool when folks from different parts of the state kind of can chime in and take equipment and shoes back to local schools in their area. Yeah. That's how it works, because we can't be in all 77 counties at one time. So it really takes everybody chipping in.
Yeah. Well, and walking around earlier too, it's not just shoes, right? There's a lot, you had golf clubs there. You had, there's a lot in that room. And how did that just kind of develop over time? When you had more space, you're we'll kind of take whatever we can get and start distributing everything if there's a need for it. Yeah,
that's such a good question, because when we started, it was cleats for kids, and we were really kind of thinking this will probably be more cleats and some equipment. And I told you the story about the soccer lady. Kind of dovetailing with that, we were delivering some equipment, and a local high school, the kids were taking off on their training run, and they were in vans and kids, on a 3-mile training run. Yeah. And I'm this is not okay. And we started our partnership with Red Coyote. And we now have a partnership with Red Coyote that they give us all the shoes that have been returned to them. Mm-hmm. And we literally have coaches that drive from the four corners of our state to get things, we call it our Ready to Run program, to get running shoes for their kids. It makes that big of a difference. And so that's how we kind of got into the running shoe side of things. And that has been prolific. New cross-country programs have started, track programs in big and small towns. But all of the different sports, a lot of it has been either what's been donated or what's been requested. Year before last, the fastest growing sport was wrestling. Coming out of COVID, I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah, I would never have said that.
In a million years. But it's in large part because of girls wrestling.
Oh, wow.
So it was growing 30% faster than any other sport. And girls flag football is a new sport. And so we're working with Tulsa Public Schools and the Donald Driver Foundation to kick off flag football in Tulsa this year at the high school level. So it's some of that equipment comes out of programmatic opportunities, and then some of it just comes out of because somebody had bike helmets and they wanted to donate them, and so then we reach out to the bike clubs and say, hey, we've got helmets, would you guys like to have them? So having all of these partnerships and us being able to work with the First Tees and the First Serves and the bike clubs, we're all pulling on the same rope, and so there's no ego in this. We don't care if the kids know where they got the shoes or the helmet or the glove. It's about getting the kids active.
Yeah. So talking about kind of when you do have, the store that you do have here, share a little bit about kind of how that experience is for a kid, or if there's a mom listening or a dad listening, it's like, we would love to give our kid that opportunity. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah,
that experience.
It is all about just kids being in need and removing barriers. And so we have our locker room where kids come shop. Very open. It's like a store. All the inventory is set out by sport, just like it would be in any academy and any Dick's. And we see the kids by appointment. And so we like to give them just that one-on-one shopping experience. We realized how important that was in COVID. Used to, it just was open door and people could come in however they wanted. And during COVID, we realized that for so many of these kids, it's just as much about the shopping experience and like feeling that they're cared for and that they're seen as it is getting the shoes. So for families that need something, they can simply call our office. All of our information's on our website, cleatsforkids.org, and just set up an appointment. For the coaches that are out there that need equipment, same thing with the coaches. We'll send you a request form. You let us know what you need. We're able to get it to you the best we can. We're donation based, and so everything that we have is given through donations. So the more donations we get, the more we can serve kids. But if we can't serve everything that you need right then, we work on getting it to you. But 98% of the kids that come into our locker room are able to take something home with them for their sport.
It's fantastic.
It's fun.
I love, just having that moment when you're sitting there watching the kids go through, and the way that you built the store. It's going to be. It looks like a store right now, but I know you're ready to renovate it too, to make it, look like someone's walking into a department store where they would go to Dick's or Nike or wherever it is they're going to go buy their shoes. It's such a good experience.
It's just to see the transformation on how these kids feel, and how many of the kids come in not talking and looking down, and they don't want to make eye contact. And literally after engaging in the locker room, they're leaving, talking, skipping down the sidewalk. And if you think I'm making it up, just come spend an afternoon with us, because it is like these kids glow, and it is just the most amazing feeling. And it's just such a blessing to think like, I get to come do this. I get to come to work and be around this and be around these incredible people that make this happen every day. So, any folks that want to volunteer, we are totally open for that, and can always use extra hands around here. So,
and you had a pretty big kind of moment, less than a week ago, pretty much we're recording, two pretty prominent Thunder players showed up with your kind of partnership with that. I would love to share some stories about, how that happened and what that experience was like to witness, those Shay and who else was it?
Lou,
Shay and Lou walked in here and see, the kids that were here kind of react to that as well.
We've been working with the Thunder since we started, and they have been such an incredible partner for us. Everything from getting large donations of playground equipment for Millwood, to Oklahoma City stuff, like So in their partnership, as it has evolved, they have a shoe donation program where they give us shoes that are no longer being used by the players, or maybe they weren't the right fit. And we'll keep those, and then we distribute those to kids that have very big feet. They're all like size 14 and above. They've also given us, if they've changed vendors, we have uniforms and things like that folks can come in and get, compression gear and things like that. So in this instance, they reached out to us and they said, we want to do something special for our, shoe donation this year. We'd like a couple of folks to come out and, maybe spend some time with some kids. And we had Putman Heights Academy, which the basketball coach's name is Otis Moses. He brought 5 of his special basketball players, and they were the most polite, most reserved, precious boys, precious young men. And when Lou and Shay walked around that corner, literally one of them fell off the bench. I mean, it was like jaw dropping, could not quit smiling. Otis Moses jumped off the bench, started hugging him, and started telling him, like, you're taking us to the ship, baby. We're going to the ship this year. And it was just awesome. And after everybody calmed down, it was incredible that Lou and Shay sat there for 30 minutes and just talked to these boys. And they got to ask them questions, and they just got to engage with them. And it was everything from what's your favorite meal before a game to when did you decide you wanted to be a basketball player, and how do you get to the level that you do? And the answers that they give, like, are just so relatable to these young boys. And these are kids that really are ones that could be inspired and whose lives are going to be changed because of that experience. And so, the Thunder, we're just lucky to have them in our community and to have their ownership and their management and their community team just so in touch with what goes on and how they can make a difference.
Yeah.
But it was a day for the staff too. Don't let me lie. That
I saw it. I think that's how I saw it. I think it was someone was posting some. Meghan might have posted something. I think she's was working for you that day.
Yeah, she was working for Cleats for Kids that day. She was doing some development work for us. It was truly just an incredible day for everybody, and I love it that they took the time then at the end of it, sat down on the couch and just talked to us for a while and wanted to know about Cleats for Kids. And I will say this, the Thunder players that even have gone on have donated stuff back to Cleats for Kids. Patrick Patterson sent his mom one day, and it was so funny. She's telling us about how she always is embarrassing him, and he's like, Mom, quit fawning over LeBron. And then at the end, she said, well, do you care if I take a picture and post it with you guys? And we're like, oh, my gosh, no. And it was just really cool when Russell Westbrook left. He had a bunch of shoes in his storage unit, and he donated those all to Cleats for Kids. So, these players really have a heart for Oklahoma City, I think.
Yeah. Well, like you said, the Thunder aren't the only only organization here that love to give back to the community, right? You mentioned Red Cody, and there's so many others.
Oh my gosh,
that are a part of that.
The Dodgers, now Comets, have had collection drives for us almost every single summer since we started. They, through a partnership with Niagara, have our varsity boards. So our teen boards are a little different model than some. We have 210 high school kids involved.
Oh, wow.
And they have all of those high school kids out to the Dodger Stadium. They let them come down to the field early, and we take pictures. And they have just been such an incredible partner. And been so good about highlighting our mission and working as partners for new baseball leagues and things like that. So we feel just so blessed that we're ready to get soccer back in the mix also. Yeah. We just feel so blessed that these professional organizations want to be engaged with nonprofits and realize the difference that makes with the youth in the community.
Yeah, and just kind of after listening to you talk about it now, it's not just people might see the logo and see the website and see you handing out shoes and just think, oh, it's just shoes and equipment. But listening to you speak about it, you're talking about starting up, a flag football league in Tulsa for girls, right? You're talking about women's wrestling. You're not just like giving shoes to people who are already in athletics. You're giving equipment to people who are starting teams now, right? So it's such a greater impact than, oh, here's just a new pair of shoes.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure you never probably dreamed of, like, we're starting leagues now in baseball and women's sports and all the other stuff too.
Never in a million years. And that's in my heart, that has been one of the coolest things, because I think, to use kind of the big cliche words, I mean, this is where you see systemic change. I mean, this is where the needle is really being moved and is creating kind of these new opportunities for sports youth development, and whether it's youth leagues or at the high school level, increasing participation, working with the administration and athletic directors of the school of like, okay, what really are the issues you're dealing with? And if it's gang violence, then is there something we can do, like as simple as providing cream-colored T-shirts to everybody that are going to wear them when you play each other? I mean, it's really sitting down and listening to people and figuring out how you can plug in. And that's not just a Cleats for Kids thing, that's an everybody thing. That's really what I feel like Cleats for Kids does really good, is trying to find out how can we support the programming that you have going on, and let us kind of be in the background and be a support system to make your life easier so that you can serve more kids. Yeah. We started, just because we work with so many nonprofits, as a youth sports coalition. So this is something that we're adding to. More nonprofits are wanting to be a part of it. And it's just a collaborative group, and we meet about 4 times a year. Our Girls in Sports initiative came out of that when Michelle Matthews from the Thunder came and spoke. And after it was over, she and UCO and the Dodgers at the time and USA Softball, we were just having coffee, and we're like, we really got to do something about middle school girls not getting involved in sports. And out of this, we've come up with this annual summit, and 210 girls came and spent half a day learning everything from health and wellness to having the Thunder dancers teach them a dance, to hearing from one of our local Paralympic athletes in the sitting volleyball team. And being able to start these things is, like I said, what in my heart I think is just so special about Cleats for Kids.
Yeah. With doing all this stuff now for, over 10 years, and kind of just getting into it and evolving as things unfold and adding things in here and there, is there anyone that you had to look forward to for a model, or did you just kind of build it as there was a need and now have people looking to you to teach them on how you've built things? Because it seems like a very well-oiled machine now.
Thanks. We've worked hard for it to seem like it's super simple. Sometimes people walk in and are like, well, gosh, this isn't that hard. I'm like, you weren't here 10 years ago.
Right.
We had a pad of paper and we were trying to figure out how to keep track of inventory. That is such a good question. There really isn't another organization that operates like Cleats for Kids. We've created our own team board system that now has 210 kids on it. It's a completely different model. We had to create our own accounting system. So we have our own way of accounting, which probably could be sold and boxed some way, but we had to create our own model of how do we get stuff in the door, how do we involve kids in that. And, when we very first started, everybody was like, well, why don't you just call Nike, or why don't you call Under Armour? And we didn't want to do that because we really wanted to focus on this kids helping kids. So it's been interesting. We do seek out advice a lot, and there are lots and lots of business leaders who have given us really, really good advice, and nonprofit leaders. I've read lots of books, but it's really fun now to be able to connect with groups across the nation. There's a National Sports Equity Coalition, and it's fun to connect with them and talk to youth sports coalitions in LA or Philadelphia and Atlanta who are asking Oklahoma City how they're doing their work. And I just think that that's really cool and something really to be proud of for Oklahoma City.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, again, you look back at probably that conversation you and Mark had, be like, I just stepped away from my job to be a mom, to take care of my kids. And now we're here 13 years later, right?
Doing this. It's, I think back now I'm on my laptop and he's on the desktop after the kids have gone to sleep. And that's how we started. And we're researching, surely somebody's doing this. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Right. And thinking that that's kind of where this all got started, And we're always evolving and always wanting to improve. And we're pretty much an open book and very transparent. And as business folks have had ideas for us and different ways of doing things, again, it's all about listening and improving and
Yeah.
saying yes and how, We're also very, very lucky, in addition to the relationship with Red Coyote, but where we've had large bulk donations made to us and have said yes and how. And when I say large bulk, like 60,000 items.
Containers worth of stuff.
Containers worth of stuff. Under Armour brought 2 semi-truckloads of football cleats one year, and this team offloaded an entire semi-truckload. Can't believe they didn't quit. I would have been like, yeah, I'm out of here. Yeah. And because of that, 12,000 pairs of football cleats went out all over the state of Oklahoma, and we could have said, you know what, I don't have a place to put that, but we didn't. And Marnie Taylor at the center scurried around, got us a building. I called every person I knew that had warehouse space, and the trucking company allowed us to make multiple stops to drop the other truck off. And out of that, Under Armour gave us 60,000 more items. Somebody gave us a warehouse at a discount rate, and for 3 years we were able to give equipment out to kids. And so, those are the kinds of things that are just like huge for an organization like ours, that just turn the tide for you. And you also look back and go like, how in the world how did 2 semi trucks end up in our driveway unannounced? I still don't know how that happened.
From one of the largest retail companies in sports, in the world too. In Oklahoma, dropping 2 trucks off in Oklahoma City.
Crazy. But again, like that's when we first started that saying like yes and how. And I'm like, okay, well now the how part is we got to figure out how to make that happen.
Yeah. And I am just thinking of that quote that I saw when I walked in, the quote that's behind me, that's the thing that you look at every day when you come in here, right? Which is, you must be the change you wish to see in the world. Like,
that's my favorite, one of my very favorite quotes.
And you never thought that you'd be here, but here we are.
You gotta live. You gotta live your life. I've had my hiccups health-wise, and just know that every day is a gift, and you just can't take any day for granted.
Yeah.
And hopefully every night when you go to bed, you can sit in gratitude and think of some things that you can be grateful for, and maybe some lives that you've touched. Maybe you smiled at somebody or you said thank you when they were having a really bad day.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be huge, It's all the little things that can roll up into making the big things happen. So that's brilliant. I love to think about it like that.
Yeah, and again, it's as simple as those pair of shoes that you have in the corner that you haven't worn in 6 months. Like, there's a place for them, and it's right here, because they're going to go on the feet of some kid that's going to think that it's Christmas.
Yeah.
Which it's that simple. And do we have a sort of a rough estimate on how many kids you've impacted in the last 13, 14 years?
Let me get the number out. Should I have looked it up?
Yeah.
Since 2011, we have helped 284,201 kids as of today.
Oh my gosh.
Is that just
right?
And with our staff is really small, and nonprofits love to operate lean and everything like that, but we're able to do it because of everybody participating and everybody contributing, and this truly is a community organization. It truly happens because people donate their shoes and people give back, and a coach cares enough to be a champion for his kids that he'll fill out a request form or he'll drive down and pick up some things. And if for those coaches out there that think like, oh my gosh, I've got enough I have to do, I'll tell you the story of a coach that was teaching weightlifting, and a kid couldn't enroll because he didn't have a pair of tennis shoes. And she came down and got a pair of tennis shoes, and when she gave them to him, she realized he was homeless, living out of a car. She got that fixed. He ended his high school as the captain of the basketball team, and graduating, obviously, because you got to make your grades to be able to play, and went on to a trade school. And, it was because somebody decided they didn't need their basketball shoes anymore, and they gave them to Cleats for Kids. And because that coach cared enough to drive 20 minutes down the highway and get them. So it truly is a very moving experience to be able to see all those elements come and work for good. Yeah.
And there's so many examples of that, right? And of, again, countless times on the podcast, we talk about community, but we talk about Oklahomans in general. And maybe this happens in other states, maybe it doesn't, who knows. But we know it happens here. And, you have a small team, but it's people like that coach that just have this feeling inside them, which after 600 plus episodes, I can tell you is an Oklahoma thing, is that they want to help somehow. And they will drive 20 minutes out of their way because it seems like the right thing to do. It is the right thing to do. And there's something in them that's telling them to do that. And
don't you feel like maybe that seed was planted for him by somebody else previously? I mean, it's all those little seeds that we're planting that are going to bear fruit later on. And somewhere along the line, somebody helped that coach, and he knew he had that feeling of what that would be like. And that's why our work with even young kids, like we go and do stuff with like first graders, and to be able to see how they get it and know when I see those kids again when they're in middle school and how they have progressed, and all of a sudden they've gone from, okay, I can drop off my shoes and somebody else is playing soccer, to conversations we're having with them in middle school of how sports and physical activity can help break the cycle of poverty. And these are the same kids that I'm watching that happen to. And it's because they're involved in community service and community service learning. And I truly think that instead of putting Band-Aids on things and trying to fix symptoms, if we can fix causes, and if we can touch kids at the educational level, that's how we're going to change the world. Yeah,
that's amazing. Finishing up, how do you, what do you need? How do you take this to the next level, right? 280,000 kids is a lot, but I know there's always more, right? And there's always a need somewhere, and unfortunately there are kids still going without. So how do people listening help 10x this and keep this growing?
Yeah, 3 ways that I can think of really very directly. One we've already talked about. Donate your shoes. I mean, you want that closet cleaned out anyway. You want that tub out of your garage. So go ahead and do it. Drop it off at one of our donation locations or call us and we'll help you figure it out. Donate the golf clubs that you're not using anymore. Get the stuff out of your garage. Clean your garage out. 2, work with your businesses and figure out how can you spread this word, and work with your schools, your kids in the schools, and invite Cleats for Kids in to see how we can make connections and support things that are going on in your community. And the last, we talked a little bit about how far-reaching this could be if we could reach all the communities across the state, and especially those small towns that don't have a lot of resources. For those folks that are out there in those communities or no folks, lend a helping hand and helping us be able to reach all of those kids that might not be able to get in the car and drive for 20 minutes. Yeah. That's kind of the third way.
That's the way to go. And what is the website to send people to?
Yeah, www.cleatsforkids, spelled out CLEATSFORKIDS.org.
Brilliant. That's awesome. And if anyone listening wants to get involved, they can reach out through the website just to volunteer, come hand out.
Absolutely. And you can you can email me at Stacy, STACY, at cleatsforkids.org. Just email me directly. Reach out to our office. We've got lots of volunteer opportunities, lots of ways to have collection drives, and even plugging in some of the teams maybe that you're coaching or something.
Brilliant. Any last question for you on a personal note, which is probably the hardest question I'm going to ask you, but favorite moment last 14, 13 years? What stands out? First thing comes to mind.
Can I have 2?
Sure. There's been so many.
One, I know. I can't ever single out just a kid moment because every one of them touched me in a different way. The first one truly is the moment with Mark when he had this idea and we sat down in our living room and talked about it. That is a life-defining moment and probably would be my favorite moment. But then one of my favorite moments with regard to just Cleats for Kids events was the very first distribution I ever did, which was absolute chaos and craziness. But there were 3 little kids that were in kindergarten. I've not ever seen them since. Their pictures are in my office, and they speak to me every single day about why we do what we do.
Yeah, it's awesome. keep crushing it. Keep having this impact. It's gonna, I know you've set this up to last a very long time, longer than we're both here, longer than the team is here. It's gonna, be around. There's always going to be a need for it, and there's always going to be a need for kids playing sports. And so, love the impact that you've had. Love to. In my head, I'm thinking like I need to text all my buddies and start donating golf shoes because we all have far too many. And so I'm going to go home and work on that for you. But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time out. Thank you so much for sharing. And I guess just for listening to that, that God voice in your head, or the signs to just, I'm going to go take some time off and be with my kids and then start this business or start this nonprofit. So thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
Thank you for Mark and his ideas. I know he's not here, but clearly he's a huge part of this as well. And your family and all the friends. For everyone knows who the McDaniel family is, so I don't have to worry about naming all of those. You guys do a great thing in Oklahoma City, and everyone I know appreciates it. So thank you for being here. Appreciate your time. And for everyone listening, we'll catch you next episode. Cheers. Hope you guys enjoyed that great episode. Thank you so much for listening. As always, huge shout out to our sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, sharing Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. Our other sponsor, the Chickasaw Nation, amazing sponsor. They do amazing things for the state, and they're always sponsoring something in Oklahoma. They're a huge supporter of Oklahoma, and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. And our third sponsor is Diffie Ford Lincoln down in El Reno. Now, this one makes me so happy because these guys are great friends of mine, play a lot of golf together. I've bought my cars from them, do most of my oil changes down there, have a cup of coffee, hang out down in El Reno. It's a good spot to go. And not only are they great friends, but they provide a great service. So for over 60 years, third generation family owned Oklahoma business down in El Reno. They're also in Bethany as well. So people in the Bethany area know the Diffies really well. But if you're looking for anything new, used, Ford, Lincoln, or whatever, I'm sure they could find anything you want. Check them out, diffieford.net, and then on Instagram at diffiefordlincoln. This episode is brought to you by the Doghouse OKC. Recently, I have been in need of some doggy daycare for my 2 pups, and the Doghouse have come in clutch. The team over there are incredible. They've taken care of my 2 golden doodles, and so it's been an honor to partner with them on the podcast and share the love. And the one thing that I do with the sponsors that I have is stuff that I use and recommend, like the Diffies with my car, Hall of Fame. They're awesome. Citizens Banks, where I bank. Chickasaw Nation, huge supporter of Oklahoma. And adding to that is the Doghouse. And so if you're in need of doggy daycare in the day or boarding overnight, they do grooming and other cool things too. But I've had a fantastic experience, and it's an honor and a privilege to share this with you too. So go to thedogHouseOKC.com and follow them on Instagram at thedogHouseOKC. And hopefully our pups will run into each other.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.